What a matchup!
And what a team, Mike. Metro PCS and the iPhone SE for $0 on a network that covers 99% of people in the U.S. Oh, impressive.
Play with the best. Switch to Metro PCS and get a 32-gig iPhone SE for $0. Metro PCS. Coverage not available in some areas, plus sales tax and $10 activation fee. Claim based on talk and text. Not valid for active numbers currently on a T-Mobile network or active on Metro PCS in the past 90 days. See store for details and terms and conditions.
I got distracted. And you're on.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Damn You Hollywood. Back after a couple of week hiatus because, well, there was nothing worth talking about. Such is life. Tonight we will be reviewing The Incredibles 2 because Disney continues to desire to rule the world and beyond. I don't know. Because they do. So we'll be tackling that movie, the good, the bad, the ugly. Mark has a brief sidebar he wants to go through as it pertains to everyone's favorite franchise, Star Wars. And then, of course, we'll talk about all the hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars this movie's already made, and yell at the handful of critics who thought this was a bad movie. Because they're just stupid. Anyway, I'm Robert Winfree. Thank you all for listening. Here with us again, as usual, because really he doesn't miss this show all that much. I do on occasion. But Mark is here. Mark, I mean, you're in Florida, man. I can only offer condolences. How are you? How have you been the last few weeks?
Oh, I've been fine. You know, I miss doing the show when we don't do it. It's a shame that this year's movie schedule was a little haphazard. I did go see Ocean's 8, by the way. My wife and I had a weekend to ourselves. We started with Slayer. We actually started with The Incredibles on Friday morning, and then Friday night we went to go see Slayer on their farewell tour. Slayer, Lamb of God, Anthrax, Behemoth, and Testament. And yet again, by the way, another event in Orlando, in the city of Orlando, where I had to jump out of the car and run into the event lest I miss the first band or wrestling match. And my wife had to stay in the car and go park it because we, despite planning to be there on time, never are. So, and I didn't want to miss Testament. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to see this show. So, yeah. Midway through pulling into the Orlando Fairgrounds, I jumped out of the car and ran away and caught the opening.
One has to wonder just how many parts Melissa felt anxiety or relief about the possibility of you just like absconding into the ether.
You know, again, for her, she doesn't want the guilt of having cost me not being able to see something that I specifically said I wanted to see and planned our timeline around wanting to see.
No, I just mean like she slows down, you jump out of the car, she parks it, and then just never sees you again.
Nah. First of all, I had the key to the hotel. So she had to find me somewhere.
It makes it easier for you to get away.
Two, you got to understand, Melissa does not want to be a single parent.
That's true. It does suck.
She has a hard enough time. She had a hard enough time when I used to work weekends, let alone being a single parent. So these jokes that you're making.
I mean, the odds of your kids becoming giant, like bags of walking fecal matter under a single parent, just go up astronomically high.
Well, besides that, I mean, never mind the damage that it does to kids, because I don't want to offend single parents out there, all the single ladies. But again, she made it very, very clear that we are a team and we are raising these children as a team. And so all the jokes about, couldn't she find someone better than you out there, or she wants to get rid of you? If I could bring her out here right now and she'd tell you, nope, we're good. And if for no other reason, then she's not raising these fucking kids by herself. But let me tell you about. Let me tell you something, Robert Winfree. Oh, I was on this rant. I was on this rant because then Saturday night, after some cocktails and some ramen and a flight of meatballs, it's a flight of meatballs and it's classy. We saw Ocean's 8. So I could review that if you want. If you don't want to review The Incredibles 2, I can right now give you a review of Ocean's 8.
It sucked.
It was fine. It was there was a couple of times. First of all, my wife is the worst feminist on the planet, and there was definitely a handful of times she kind of elbowed me, and she went #MeToo in a very sardonic and sarcastic way. So that's what I love about my wife. She's like, man, all these bitches need to shut up. That's where she's coming from. But the movie was very Me Too, very #MeToo. And, it didn't really add anything to the franchise except for an all-women cast. Other than that, it was kind of, it was a heist movie. No better or worse than most of them.
Heist movie.
No better or worse than your average heist movie.
I imagine worse than everything I've heard about it was worse than your average heist movie. Oh, God. Have I mentioned that Ben Shapiro stole my bit?
I believe something along those lines, yes.
Yeah, for those of you who haven't heard this, because this pertains specifically to Ocean's 8, if you don't...
Hang on. This is what happens when we take a few weeks off from the show. Robert and I have to kibitz for the first half an hour like two old girlfriends who haven't seen each other in a while. Go ahead.
Yeah, let me go through this very quickly. But, yeah, for those of you unaware, Ben Shapiro's a conservative writer, podcaster, really interesting guy, all things considered, whether you agree with him or not. And I'm not advocating for all of his positions here, but I do listen to his show. And when talking about Ocean's 8, he was reading the reviews and explaining how these people just can't bring themselves to say the movie isn't any good. And I was listening to this going, you stole my bit. Yeah, like in some places, not exactly word for word, but pretty darn close to when we reviewed A Wrinkle in Time. Because all of them were just bending over backwards, not to say, boy, this kind of sucks.
That's funny. Well, look, just my quick 50-word review of Ocean's 8. Everyone puts in a okay to great performance. As far as the actual heist goes, there aren't enough obstacles for the team to come over to really create sufficient tension or interest, and it very much felt like cheerleading for women. It felt like there was nothing pushing this film forward than the inertia of, if you can have an all-men movie, why can't you have an all-women movie? Now, was it as ridiculous as the Ghostbusters female movie? No. This one had some degree of, there weren't vagina jokes in it and stuff. It was, this seemed to be made for adults, by adults, for adults. But it was definitely it was, there just didn't seem to be any identity to it other than, hey, remember when we did this with all men? Well, now it's all women. Get it? And there's nothing more to the movie.
I haven't seen it. My mom saw it and said she fell asleep partway through it. It takes forever to get going and isn't all that interesting.
My dad is probably one of the biggest feminists I know. Weird, right? And he was
not really.
And he was like, meh, it was okay. And my mom fell asleep through it, though she loved The Incredibles, which is what we actually came here to talk about. But before we do, I want to address the whole Star Wars thing right now. Now,
all right. Everyone listening, you can fast forward to the next 10 minutes as Mark rants about Star Wars.
It's more of this perception that like Star Wars is a damaged brand under Kathleen Kennedy. These perceptions that Solo is this abysmal failure. If you take into account Solo's performance against Rogue One, Last Jedi, Force Awakens, and all of that, yeah, sure, it made significantly less money. But if you look at all of the Marvel films, they range from, I mean, I think they all made money, but they range from just barely making their budget to billions of dollars, right? Now the most successful one being the last Avengers movie, which finally crossed the $2 billion mark, and I believe actually beat out, they're saying it beat out Titanic. So I haven't
domestically, and I imagine that, I'm not sure that's adjusted for inflation. If it is, good, because Titanic isn't all that great a movie.
But the point being that if you look at the success rate of in terms of financials for all of the Marvel films, I mean the pendulum swings both ways. Some of them did better than others. There's greater variance than you might think if you just said, "Oh, it's a Marvel movie." Like, no, there's variance there. There's some big hits and there's some singles. There, now if you look at the Fox X-Men franchise, there were some miserable failures, and then there were ones where that did quite well, adjusted for inflation or not. So, I mean, I think the problem is perception. The perception that Star Wars is somehow special, and that every Star Wars is an event film. And the Red Letter Media guys kind of tackled this in the way, and they made a joke out of it. They were like, the way to save Star Wars is to actually make them events. Make them exclusive events that you have to pay $200 to get into. But being realistic, I think people have to understand that Solo is Doctor Strange. Solo is the Incredible Hulk. Solo is Ant-Man. What I mean is...
No one cares about the Incredible Hulk.
I'm just naming ones where... I mean, Doctor Strange did okay, but it didn't do... It didn't do like crazy numbers, if I remember correctly. It
wasn't gangbusters.
People liked it. It made its budget, and we moved on. I think Ant-Man was Ant-Man and the Incredible Hulk are at the low end of Marvel financials.
The Incredible Hulk sucks, and Ant-Man has a serious identity crisis.
Okay.
And I don't mean the character, the Incredible Hulk. I mean the movie.
Well, again, you're conflating issues here. I'm talking about strictly financials, not content or quality. The point being, the reason I'm bringing all this up is there's a lot of YouTube videos out there now and a lot of Twitter remarks about how Star Wars is a damaged brand. It isn't. Once Disney bought Star Wars and decided they were making new movies and they were going to start making these, what are they calling them now? The non-trilogy movies, Rogue One, anthology movies. Once they decided they were going to make a bunch of anthology movies, that was the end of the exclusivity, folks. It's not special anymore. They're just movies. Some will do better than others. Some will be more eventful than others. The reasons why Avengers is an event movie is because they it took 18 pictures to lead up to it. This was the cap off to a 10-year story. The Skywalker trilogy films are event films. One, because it was rebooting the franchise, and then the second one was it was the reemergence of Luke Skywalker. That was an event in the picture. The third one will also be an event, probably. But like the Boba Fett movie, the Obi-Wan Kenobi movie.
Let's just hope they don't make the Boba Fett movie. It's such a bad idea.
Whatever the Rian Johnson trilogy is, these are not going to be events. They're just movies. Some will do better than others. Some will garner more interest than others. I don't think Kathleen Kennedy's problems with the Star Wars franchise was essentially the same problem that Marvel had, and to an even greater degree, the same problem that DC had, is that they say they want to give directors their free reign to do whatever with just some minor notes, and then they get there, and it's like, whoa, we never said do that. It's like don't make Solo dour. Give it some levity. And then the Lego guys
look at the people you hired. No, like the original Solo movie. Yeah, look at the people you hired. Yeah, it's going to be Dower. Oh crap, we don't want Dower. Get me Ron Howard.
Well, that's the thing. It's like the people, the guys that made the Lego movie. I mean, I know you don't like it, so try to keep your comments to yourself. Because again, not talking quality here, but the point of it is that for most people thought it was a very funny, almost parody of pop culture done as Lego. Okay, that's great. So you bring in these guys to add a little levity to a Star Wars idea, and I don't even think that was the whole problem. I think part of the problem was their direction style. They used a lot of takes, to get to per scene, and I think they just essentially wasted a lot of money. And that was part of the problem. Solo is a successful movie financially if you don't shoot it twice and fire the directors and send the lead actor to acting school. Okay, if you keep part of the success of the Marvel movies is that for a lot of them they managed to keep the budget for these for these heavily laden with special effects action movies still pretty low. When you start getting into the opposite problem, which is what DC had, I mean, again, Batman v Superman and Justice League are probably more successful if you took their budgets and cut them in half. But again, they spent an extra year shooting Batman v Superman to quote-unquote get it right. And then with Justice League, it had to be, again, another movie they had to reshoot. Almost the entire movie. Yeah,
they reshot the entire last act at a minimum. Right. Like 80% of that was not Zack Snyder's film. Right. It was stupid.
So again,
hey, let's just double the budget.
So Solo, Justice League, Batman v Superman all kind of fall into the same problem of probably would have been more successful had you hadn't had to shoot the movie twice. So again,
and to be fair, Batman v Superman is while deeply flawed, was a more successful film, all things considered.
Right.
At least, especially from a financial perspective.
I mean, Suicide Squad was a movie that they didn't have to shoot twice. They took the same footage and edited like 3 different movies out of it, and the one that made it to theaters actually made money. But again, the budget on that was low. Again, not talking quality.
Yeah. No. I mean, my issue with Suicide Squad was actually narrative coherence because you could tell they cut the crap out of it.
Right. So, in short, I don't think people are being fair to the Star Wars franchise or Kathleen Kennedy. Yeah, Kathleen Kennedy probably... I don't think she should be replaced, but I think she needs to kind of, have a come-to-Jesus moment, really look in the mirror and say, okay. Take some notes from Kevin Feige and run your ship a little bit more sternly. Don't let the directors, Josh Trank your movies. You got to keep control over them if you're making these big deal franchise movies, or you're going to run into this problem of, because again, the other side of this is just let it go and let them make art. Let them make art, let them do whatever the hell they want, and come what may. But they're not going to do that with a multi-million-dollar franchise. They're just not. It's stupid to suggest otherwise. So again, you have to assert, Kathleen Kennedy, you have to assert more control, just like Kevin Feige does. This is why What's-His-Face walked off of Ant-Man. I want to make my picture. Well, you're going to make our picture. Well, fuck off. I'm not going to do it. Okay.
Then, hey, we'll just give, Moron in charge of Ragnarok free reign. But
again, you have, again, that was laden with notes as far as what to do with it and what not to do with it. So, anyway, it's just it's something I've been thinking about because I keep seeing all of these stupid videos on YouTube about how the Star Wars franchise is dead and everything. And it's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, when we get to the money, I'll talk a little bit about where Solo is right now. And yeah, it's got a ways to go, but it's only got a ways to go to become profitable because of this stupid budget issue. Stop me. I mean, you, and I don't want to get into a debate about this, but like when Boba Fett comes out, if Boba Fett keeps to a $200 million budget, or maybe even less, and does what a Star Wars movie is probably going to do, it's going to be... it's going to be... I'm sorry, I'm laughing because my wife is either doing whippets or just eating from the whipped cream can. I have an issue with this. I have a problem here. I asked to get a snack earlier, and you fucking ugly face guilted me.
Because your son was still awake.
Oh, okay. Now that the kids are sleeping, it's okay to eat from the whipped cream can and have all the snacks I want. Oh, terrific!
Yes.
I didn't know those were the rules.
Dude, I could have told you that, and I'm a.
I wish this is one.
How do I know that and you don't?
This is one of those moments where I wish this was a video show. Okay.
No, you don't. Our viewership would tank if people had to look at us.
Put your eyebrows down, sexy. Go take your whipped cream can to the bedroom. Get out of my studio.
Not a studio, Mark. It's a living room.
It's a half a living room. Anyway, how are you in the kitchen and I'm still getting text messages from you? Anyway, my wife is sending me text messages and eating whipped cream. Anyway, all right, so that's it. I had a burning desire to defend the Star Wars franchise from the assholes of the universe. We can move on now.
Yeah, let me just say, I hope they don't make Boba Fett as a movie because I think it's stupid. But it does continue the trend of attaching directors I am somewhat interested in to projects I think shouldn't exist. Because I kind of like...
Why are you
against
James
the Boba
Mangold? Fett thing? No, why are you? Why? Boba Fett might have an interesting story to tell. I mean, at the very least, if they started with him getting out of the Sarlacc pit and even base it remotely on the short story that was in Tales from Jabba's Palace, I think that's a great idea.
I don't think they will. We're getting a crappy semi-origin like Solo.
What happened after they chopped his dad's head off?
Yeah.
Ugh, well, either way. I mean,
and Boba Fett's a nothing character. He's a moderately interesting costume.
Again, people. There are certain Marvel films that before they came out and when they were just announced, people were just like, "Why would you do that?" But let's remember, Black Panther, not a popular character previously. He happened to be benefiting. His movie happened to have been benefited by coming out in 2018 and having a good showing in Civil War. And being, just in general, being a well-made, competent movie, but again, when they announced Black Panther, my first thought was that's like a C-level Marvel character.
Yeah, but Marvel Studios has a significantly better track record than the Star Wars films do at this point.
Yeah, at this point, but they can absolutely pull the nose.
And look, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying I am highly skeptical and would rather they didn't.
It's because you hate Star Wars and white people. Let's get on with this.
I hate everyone, Mark. Come on, we've been over this.
That's true. Will you please do a plot synopsis for Incredibles 2 now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
All right, we pick up basically... I mean, bear in mind, this movie took 14 years to actually be released, which we'll get into this a little bit later, but has largely to do with Pixar's schedule and release dates being scheduled out far in advance and people working on things, and really there's a finite number of people working there, so et cetera, et cetera. But it picks up basically where the first one leaves off. We get parts of the battle with the Underminer, which goes hilariously wrong. I really wanted him to show up again at the end, just for the hilarity of it, but alas. No, they're celebrating at the end, and then the Underminer returns. Like, oh, we can do it right this time.
No, I'm giggling. I'm giggling because I feel like you were just about to say for the lulz.
Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, this goes relatively sideways for them. They can't actually apprehend him. And they wind up they save City Hall, but it does get partially damaged. And the outrage resumes because supers are bad people. Don't you understand? They wreck stuff. We have insurance that pays for all these things that, supervillains steal all the time because we just don't want to deal with it. We're just going to pay them off and pray they don't actually nuke the planet.
In fairness, there is a history of appeasement in this world.
Yeah, it's a stupid one, but
it exists. Is my point.
It does exist. And it's stupid, but it is. Get
on with it, Winston Churchill.
So they are apprehended by various agencies. They are relocated for the last time because the government is shutting down the whatever bureau was responsible for relocating superheroes and keeping them integrated into society quietly and peacefully. But this incident has drawn the attention of Saul Goodman. I mean, Bob Odenkirk. I mean, it's one of those two. Like that's all Bob Odenkirk plays at this point. He stumbled into a brilliant character and is now going to play that character for the rest of his career. Who is a telecommunications billionaire of some variety who has obsessed with superheroes and wants to reintegrate them into society as superheroes, and he and his sister run this, again, massive company. He approaches our primary heroes, so Mr. Incredible, Elastigirl, and Frozone, about essentially a public relations stunt series of them to make people see superheroes in a better light rather than simply viewing the catastrophic damage left in their wake, but seeing what they actually do. To this end, they decide that Elastigirl is actually the best option to start things off with because she has the lowest amount of collateral damage on average in incidents involving her. So she takes off to save the name of superheroes everywhere, while Mr. Incredible has to become a stay-at-home dad and deal with a toddler with a multitude of powers, teenage daughter trying to date, and a son with... he doesn't actually have anything approaching an arc here, apart from that he sucks at math. And to be fair, Common Core math is horribly, horribly stupid. It's just the dumbest thing ever. But quasi-hilarity ensues on that front. As for Elastigirl, she stops a train from being destroyed, saves an ambassador, all while being taunted by the Screen Slaver, who is opposing her and has issues with humanity in general, which is fair, because people suck. Elastigirl apprehends what they believe to be who they believe to be the Screen Slaver, but it turns out to be just a pizza delivery guy, and if you don't see the big twist coming by this point, I can't help but wonder about how old you are or how much head trauma you've suffered. It turns out that the Screen Slaver is actually it's Bob Odenkirk's sister, who is she's the actual creator, the technical guru for this telecom company. He is the face and salesman. She has developed these screens which have remarkably high accuracy levels with hypnosis. Because standard supervillain fare, I guess. I mean, hypnosis doesn't work that way, but that's a thing. She is able to hypnotize Elastigirl and subsequently both Frozone and Mr. Incredible. This leaves their kids to save the day, which of course they do. They rendezvous on a boat because, that's never actually explained apart from the fact that Bob Odenkirk's character has a boat and just kind of wants to show it off. But there's a meeting of world leaders to make superheroes legal again. They all sign it, and then the trap is sprung by all the hypnotized and mind-controlled superheroes to turn the whole thing into more of a disaster, drive the boat into the center of this city, will just cause catastrophe, and forever turns public sentiment against superheroes because and I'll get into this later, there is actually a fairly legitimate logic to both her and her brother, who are opposed in this sense. But again, the kids show up on the boat, break the mind control, the heroes save the day, they're reintegrated as superheroes, and the villains are captured and carted off to prison. Now, there's a lot of smaller things that we have skipped over here that I do want to go into in detail, but that's the basics of the plot, and some of the stuff surrounding it I think should probably be tackled more individually than collectively as far as that goes. So, Mark, where would you like to start with this?
Well, I went to go see it with my wife and kids and my parents, and as I said, my mother fell asleep during Ocean's 8, stayed awake during this one and happened to enjoy it. I think the consensus was everyone enjoyed the movie. Things that stood out to me, I initially was actually going to have my wife come on the show, but just the technical piece of getting this all to work, I didn't want to have to try to figure out how to capture her sound and my sound and because the built-in microphone on my computer I don't think is as good as it needs to be. So I was like, I just said, go ahead and go to sleep. But my wife and I talked for a very long time in the car after the movie was over about how this movie dealt with the mom that goes back to work, and how the betrayal of the father at home with the kids, because that's kind of the heart of the movie. There's action and adventure and other stuff happening here too. It's kind of thematically it was a bit layered for a kids movie, which is fine. But I really wanted to talk about
Pixar doesn't
that.
make kids movies in the traditional sense either.
No, they don't. But I wanted to talk about that for a little bit because we, usually when they do like the Mr. Mom thing, the old Michael Keaton movie with Terry Garr, I believe it was. The dad has this arc where he's sort of a stumbling, bumbling idiot, and I think it builds to him like having a vision of himself like cheating on the wife and everything sort of, the ice sort of breaking beneath him and him falling into the depths and realizing, oh, I've got to be better at this. And then, of course, the final act of the movie is he does get better, and he becomes a superior Mr. Mom. I don't think they did it quite that way with Mr. Incredible in this. There's no resentment on his part. I think at first he feels snubbed by not being the one selected, because and sort of the whole
he's slighted more than he is resentful of his wife, which is good.
But absolutely. And I love that. And I love that exchange. Heavyweight problems need heavyweight solutions, and it's like the cost analysis says otherwise, pal. And I thought that was great. There was a great acknowledgement of the fact that the big brooding Hulk character causes more damage than he does save people, but the Elastic Girl who's malleable can get things done without causing nearly as much destruction. I thought that was fantastic. Sort of a meta admission of the writers about superheroes and the way they're portrayed. Because again, the attraction is usually to the big, bad, most destructive superheroes, right?
Hence Mark's undying love of the Hulk, despite being a terrible character.
But I mean, who likes Mr. Fantastic? You know what I mean? Like his powers suck. so I thought it was
which is so ironic considering he's arguably like simultaneously the greatest Marvel superhero and like the worst person in all of Marvel canon.
Yes, and if you want more of that sort of thing, you should check out the latest source material, The Trial of Galactus. Or, as it was put on Facebook, the Trail of Galactus with Pat Moline. Anywho. But I like the way that they handled Mrs. Incredible kind of going back into the field. Very quickly, because Melissa talked a lot about this, about having stayed home with two babies at separate times in her life and then having to go back to work. That feeling of part of your identity is your job. My wife talked about being a teacher, and that's very much a part of her identity. It definitely drives her. It's one of her favorite things to do. One of my favorite things to do is this podcast, even this one with Robert Winfree, but just podcasting in general. And if you took that away from me, you'd be taking away a part of who I am. And so when Melissa was home with the two kids, and she wasn't a teacher as such, she was just a mom, she felt very incomplete. And I felt that the movie addressed that, because I think that's a big thing with a lot of women, is you don't want to slight your children, you don't want to slight your family, but you do want to be whole as a person. And there's guilt that goes along with that, because you find you're enjoying being out of the house. And I know this might come as weird coming from a guy, but I'm trying to, as much as I can, do justice and parrot some of the things that my wife was saying that I agree with and that I observed. It's not like she said these things and it was like, oh my God, I never knew. No, we've had this discussion before, separate from this movie. I think a lot of women struggle with that balance between being true to themselves and being a positive part of the workforce and being the best mom that they can be. And I think it keeps a lot of them up at night. And you saw that with Mrs. Incredible. they didn't laden it on too much because you had to tell the story here, and you needed to get to the car chase. But there was enough there that it gave you pause, and that I think a lot of women was like, see, that they saw themselves in that character, which I really liked, because the first one was about Mr. Incredible kind of having this midlife crisis, and what happens when you take away all the things that make a man, and you just reduce him to this drone, and how that makes a man feel, and how incomplete that makes him. This movie turns the tables on it and says, now let's look at the women's perspective on that very same issue, which I thought was great. By the same token, I love the fact, and now I can speak very positively from the guy's perspective, because there's been a lot of situations where, as a father, I'm left alone with the children. I actually made a joke about this once. My wife went to Utah to go visit her friend, and a lot of my wife's friends were like, you're going to leave your kids home alone with your husband? Like, that's crazy. He's like, yeah. She's like, yeah, he's their father. He's perfectly capable of minding 2 children without the house catching on fire. And occasionally I would take a picture and I would post it on Facebook, and it was like, this just in, biological father takes care of biological children, film at 11. And occasionally I would do a funny update. Children were fed and went to bed with no issue, film at 11. Because the idea that the father is an incompetent boob and can't get anything done and is entirely dependent on the woman to handle everything is a Hollywood trope, and definitely something that gets played up in a lot of sitcoms, but I think is entirely inaccurate. I think that fathers are more capable than we are made to look like on television and in movies, and I think in some cases, despite what women believe them to be. Granted, I think if I didn't...
Hollywood has spent the last, 20 years denigrating fathers, turning them into buffoons.
Right. And I think if I didn't...
Here, if I may, there's not... Mr. Incredible's not a buffoon. He's adjusting to having to do something he simply has never done before to this degree.
Right.
And that's significantly different from, boy, I sure did burn the waffles this morning and gave the kids the wrong clothes. Whatever nonsense, they get up to on something like Modern Family, because boys and that, but again, there's none of that. This is just a guy adjusting to something and being in over his head.
It's like that bit in The Simpsons where the teachers don't have the answer textbooks anymore. It's like, I don't understand how the multiplication tables work.
Yeah, Martin will be teaching class today, children.
But I purposely sort of fought against that type, and I wouldn't allow Melissa to sort of pigeonhole me into this idea that I'm incapable of taking the kids. I have many times thrown Melissa out of the house and saying, go get a massage, go shop with what little money we have, go do something to make yourself happy. I have it. I'm good. I don't know if enough men do that. I don't know if enough women let their men do that. It's kind of a problem both ways, and that's something that Melissa has also acknowledged, that some of her friends won't let the men take over. And I think some of the men are kind of okay with that. I refuse to be that way. I'm very, very, territorial with my children, sometimes to a fault. But I liked seeing that personage of the stay-at-home dad on screen, because it does play against type. It does play against the 20 years of denigrating fathers, and I thought it was pretty accurate. It's not that he's a dummy, or a buffoon. There are certain things to this day, like my kids come to me with, I have no idea what they're talking about. And I find myself saying, well, back in my day, like an old man, and my wife kind of has to explain things like, no, it's this now, not that, and why
would they change math?
Yeah, it was one of those moments. Like the why would they change math thing is a very real thing.
Oh, it is, because the way they, again, I think it's called Common Core math. It's just profoundly stupid.
Yeah, but I'm not even talking about with math. Just I'll give you an example from my own life. We argued over whether or not we should send my daughter to an out of neighborhood school. And the reason being was it was more convenient for my wife's commute and for our daycare provider, who is my mother-in-law, for my son. So it just made more sense to send her to a school out of neighborhood close to my mother-in-law and where my wife worked than it did to send her to the neighborhood school, which is where I wanted her to go to, because that's what I did when I was a kid, and I don't understand why we're doing things differently now. Why are we... Where did school choice come from? Your choice was you went to the school down the street. That's what your choice was. Back in my day, goddammit, when men were men and the sheep were afraid, I'll tell you what. But, that's where...
Well, I mean, part of it's because the education system has steadily gone downhill since your day.
Yeah,
in large part, but that's a whole other thing.
But that was a real conversation that happened. So, I definitely found myself when he was like, "Why would they change math?" Like, boy, have I been there. Literally, both literally and figuratively with the math thing. When they there's stuff that's specifically related to school where I'm like, well, they didn't do this when I was a kid, and my wife has to remind me that was. See, I'm 42.
40 years ago.
Yeah, so 35 years ago, roughly, if I'm doing my math right. Things changed in 35 years, and in my opinion, not necessarily for the better. But you do get to that point.
Some for the better, some for the worse, such as life.
I think, and then there was a lot of fun stuff with him in that role. I know it was kind of a gag subplot, but Jack's powers were hilarious, and
yes.
My two favorite sequences of the movie were both action sequences. It was Jack versus the raccoon.
Oh god, that is the best thing. That is the best thing in that entire movie is Jack fighting that raccoon.
No, I enjoyed her car chase bit with the train because I just thought it was
but
I thought it was a well animated sequence and a good use of her powers. Her ability to split the bike.
But like the best thing in that whole movie is still Jack and the raccoon.
So, I didn't find too many flaws with the movie. I thought, and I think you wanted to speak more about the villain than I care to. I thought the villain's motivations made sense. That came right out.
Great,
came right out of
sense.
Superman. The idea of don't become dependent on other people to save you, save yourself. Okay, cool. And so I don't want superheroes around. The tendency for humanity to get lazy is too great. Cool. All right, I get it. Why are you against your brother? Well, your brother, was traumatized.
My brother's an idiot.
Well, I think they spoke to his trauma being a big motivator for him.
Yeah.
And so I thought that all worked for me. I thought the kids were fine. Again, Dash doesn't really do anything in the movie, but I think he had a bigger role in the first one to begin with.
He did.
And again, there was a lot going on in this, so somebody had to get short shrift. It might as well have been Dash, because they gave a lot to Violet. And I thought, you in writing teenage girls, there's that line between tolerable and intolerable, and she was right at that line of tolerable. To where you're not actively rooting against her because she's a horrible human being at this age. She definitely went through those tantrumy teenage tropes. Everything's embarrassing and all of that.
Hey, look, they're not just. And to be fair, those are not just tropes in the trope sense. That's reality. Like if you've ever dealt with teenagers,
sure. But that's my point. I thought they handled her with a degree of care and just didn't make her a shrew. So all in all, 4 stars. Loved it. Thought it was a very competent movie, and given what we've had to experience with the last couple of Pixar movies, where the pendulum has swung between like Coco and Cars and The Great Good Dinosaur and Inside Out and Finding Nemo and all of that, I thought this was definitely on the upswing.
Yeah, this clearly had all the people, a lot of the same people involved that were involved with the first one, so they are all very comfortable with the world. They're all very comfortable with the jokes and the characters, and it all works. I think, is there anything else I wanted to really touch on? I think you kind of went over a lot of... Oh, apart from Jack and the raccoon, the other biggest laugh I think my theater got was Violet's water through the nose.
Poor Mr. Incredible. He was trying to fix things.
He was, and he wound up being, and again, he wound up, all right, I screwed up, explained where he was coming from. He got, again, I liked that, again, he wasn't Homer Simpson, and I love Homer as a character because Homer actually cares. It is actually his more defining characteristic than his, oafishness, is that under all that, he's genuinely trying to do the right thing more often than not. We didn't get that. We didn't get oafishness here. We got, again, someone just kind of in over their head. And if you've never had to, care for 3 kids, including one of them being a toddler who occasionally morphs into a demon baby, there's struggles, but he's never, he's never made to be less than. He's never the subject of derision. I was okay with the villains. Again, it's a very well-worn argument that they're making, and that's not a bad thing. It's logical, and if you were to sit down and have a rational discussion about it, it's not crazy.
Again, it was right out of Man of Steel.
Yeah, and it's been around forever in a lot of respects since they started writing, superheroes seriously. So I was fine with that. The other thing I wanted to touch on, the music for this is really fun. Sorry, fun being subjective. It is a deliberate, play on classic superhero music. It's really kind of, swingy, big bandy, and I had a lot of fun with it. I kind of like that they actually, they referenced that each superhero had a theme at some point during the movie, and then over the end credits, they actually played the themes to all 3 of the different. They played Mr. Incredibles and Frozones and Elastigirls, and I got to see. That amused me. That amused me greatly. So that was the other thing I think I really wanted to highlight was the music for this is really good. It's really well thought out and well designed to play on what they're trying to play on. I was also a little bit sad we didn't get any character interactions between Bob Odenkirk and Jonathan Banks, because even a quasi-random reunion of Saul and Mike would have tickled me, but such is life. Again, I don't have all that many complaints. I didn't quite enjoy it as much as the first one. I think it's lacking a little bit of the kind of the heart and the emotionality that the first one had, but I don't necessarily think that's a huge negative because they were deliberately expanding here rather than the first one, which was which was much more of a centralized story.
I always thought the first one was a tad morose, not the band.
No, I get what you mean.
I thought this one was a little bit more bright and colorful and light in terms of themes and portrayals and whatnot. I always found the first Incredibles to be, I don't want to say depressing, but there was an American beauty-ness to the first one, and it takes a while to really get going and get out and pull itself out of that. And if I don't know if people understand what I mean by American beauty, but dealing with a guy, with a middle-aged man in the middle of a midlife crisis, struggling with loss of identity as he's been emasculated over the years, isn't fun. At least not to me. And while there's fun
that's
to be,
because you're about 3 years removed from going through one yourself.
Oh please, yeah, I'll be fine. I've been going to.
You'll get through it.
I just went to go see Slayer. I'm good. That happens to people who got married in their 20s and and have done nothing but work for the past 20 years. Then that's when they go crazy. I got married last week. By comparison, so I'm good. But
for the second time, at least.
Sure. In any case, there's some fun to be had with with them in the middle of that midlife crisis, in as far as not acting their age and stuff like that, and sort of out of sorts. But that was my biggest problem, I think, with the first Incredibles, which is as much as I liked it, there didn't seem to be as much, and I hate to use the word fun again, but there didn't seem to be as much.
It wasn't lighthearted. It really wasn't.
No, it really wasn't. And I
prefer
lighthearted.
One of the reasons I enjoy it.
I think back to one of the things I loved about Finding Nemo, Finding Dory, it crossed into absurd towards the end. It got really slapsticky and silly, and it ends with the car going off the cliff to the sounds of "What a Wonderful World," which to this day still cracks me up. And while there's definitely room in this world for the morose and for the tragic, and I'll see those kinds of movies and I'll appreciate them. If you're asking me to rank and what I prefer lighthearted to morose.
Which is just one of the ways we're different.
Yep. Imagine me and you and me. How you cross the dice was meant to be. Well, only one for me is you, and you for me. So happy together.
You done?
Yes, sir.
All right. I don't think I have anything else to say about the craft of the movie. Again, I have... How do I say this? It's a little bit narratively not disjointed. That's not the right word. It touches on a lot of things that it didn't get to really develop. And I think Brad Bird mentioned this. The original release date for this movie was October of 2019, which is when Toy Story 4 is coming out. And Toy Story 4 was originally supposed to come out when this one did. They wound up swapping those release dates. So there's a few things that in writing probably didn't get as fully fleshed out and edited down as could have been. But that's an incredibly minor gripe. Beyond that, yeah, I don't have a whole lot of complaints about this, and I look forward to seeing what people said negatively about it so I can point out how stupid they are. Unless they bring up a valid point, in which case I'm happy to acknowledge it.
All right. Well, with that said, here comes the money.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, 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 money.
Dollar, dollar. Dollar, dollar.
Alrighty, on a budget of $200 million, because they did not have to shoot the movie twice.
All right, stop that. You haven't had a stroke.
Why are you talking that way? I had a stroke.
I had a stroke.
We are currently sitting pretty worldwide at $259 million. Its opening weekend, I believe, is the highest grossing animated movie of all time at $182 million and change for its opening weekend. So if this tracks like Finding Dory tracked, this is going to make over $1 billion at that rate.
I don't think it'll get to $1 billion, but it'll be very successful.
Well, the math for me is simple. It had a higher opening than Finding Dory did. If it tracks the way that Finding Dory tracked, Finding Dory made over $1 billion that year.
I have a hard time seeing this one having the same legs that Finding Dory did.
Okay. Well, you never know.
Again, I'm not predicting doom and gloom. This is going to be a wildly successful film. I'm not sure it gets to $1 billion.
Okay. Figure it settles at $700 million? Seem right
Somewhere
to you?
around there, probably.
It's not like this has a whole lot of...
Closer to 8.
I was going to say, there's not a lot of... I don't think there's any animated features for the rest of the summer that this is incredibly competitive. No. Okay, you know what its big competitor is in the animated feature realm for the summer? Hotel Transylvania 3.
Ugh. Which you're making me review.
No, I'm not.
Really?
Yeah, I took that off the list.
Woo-hoo.
I'm gonna go see it because I think another family and my family we're all going together. But no, I'm not making you review it.
Thank you. Well, I think you have to. The two big things over the next few weeks that are going to, I think, eat into it a little bit. you have Fallen Kingdom coming out next week,
Right.
and the Jurassic Park / World films are actually viewed as not young families, but you can take a 10-year-old to see those, generally speaking, give or take.
Here's what I have on... No, the reason why we're not reviewing Hotel Transylvania 3 Summer Vacation is because we're reviewing Die Hard on One Leg.
Oh, yeah, Skyscraper. Woohoo!
Then
Happy.
the weekend of the 20th, I don't have anything listed. I'll also be in New York, so it won't matter. But the following week...
Planning on getting shot then, are you?
Nope, going to my cousin's wedding-ish.
Wedding-ish?
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it.
Right.
But on the 27th, we've
Fallout.
got Fallout. We've also got Teen Titans Go to the Movies. Okay,
No.
so there's another animated feature.
I will not see that.
I will be taking the kiddies. Christopher Robin is the 3rd of August. And
That movie's just gonna... I'm gonna have to see that twice. Like, the first time I'm just gonna be a total mess the whole time.
And then we've got the Meg on August 10th.
It's gonna be so bad.
And now
I can't wait.
I should make you review the Happy Time Murders.
I would absolutely not. I just straight up wouldn't.
I'm gonna go see it, but I know
Look,
you refuse.
if you tried to make me review that, I would find something else and I would see that instead.
Just talk every time I threw it to you. That's all you talk about. You wouldn't even acknowledge it. Anyway,
Refuse to. Absolutely refuse to.
Yeah, so we're not gonna do the Happy Time Murders. Instead, we're gonna do our summer wrap up. But the whole point of bringing all this up is that when you look at the big summer, we just named 2 animated features that this would possibly be competitive with, and they're not. They're just not. I mean, will Hotel Transylvania 3 do okay numbers? Sure. Kids will come and see it. Families will come and see it. It'll do okay. I'm sure it'll be profitable. It's not making $1 billion. It's not making $700 million. It might make $500 million. Maybe. Then there's nothing else. Teen Titans Go to the Movies will do okay.
You have to look beyond just that. You have to look into what else is going to eat into its audience.
Again, well, okay, so Christopher Robin, maybe.
I'll maintain that Jurassic World's going to take some from it.
Right, but I mean, outside of that, Mission Impossible...
Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Oh, I forgot about that. Whoops.
I mean, again, you have a couple of weeks in a row of nothing that's going to, bury it by any reasonable stretch of the imagination.
Mm-hmm.
But it's got some stiffer competition there. I mean, look, everything got out of the way of finding Dory.
Right.
Just went, nope. We are not touching this with a 10-foot pole. Even though that actually makes it right for counter programming, but I'm only a logical person, not a studio executive.
I don't even think there's anything from Universal's Illumination this year. Yeah, Hotel Transylvania is Sony.
Yeah, no, I saw a preview for something of theirs. I can't remember.
But it's not this summer.
When is it? No, it's The Grinch. Yeah, they have The Grinch coming out later this year.
That's November.
So, yeah. Which will do fine when it comes out.
So, with that said, let's take a look at how the weekend shaped up. June 15th through the 17th. Obviously, The Incredibles 2 was the #1 movie of the weekend. It knocked Ocean's 8 out of its #1 spot to #2. Tag, You're It, debuted at #3. Solo.
I kind of want to see that. I don't know why, but I kind of do.
If I have time, I'm probably going to go see it.
I'll wait for I'll wait for your perspective on it then, because if you hate it, I'm probably going to enjoy it. That's kind of how that breaks down.
Solo, which is doing just fine. As a matter of fact, let's check in on Solo. How is Solo doing?
Let's not.
Solo is currently at $341 million worldwide on a budget of $1 zillion. Moving right along.
Yeah, again, when you have to shoot your movie twice. Sorry, guys, that you're so unlikely to make money at that.
They're just gonna write this one down and move along. That's the best. That's whatever. Anyway, Solo went from 2 to 4. Deadpool 3 to 5. Superfly debuted at #6. Hereditary, which apparently is really scary, moved from 4 to 7.
I don't know. I need to talk with someone who's seen it. I mean, my perspective on horror is different from a lot of people. It's not that I don't scare, but I watch a lot of horror. Like, if all you're doing is playing into tropes, it's significantly less successful. I kind of need something that's especially more than like a bunch of jump scares, which apparently this is. I just need to find someone whose perspective I not just trust, but know how it relates to my own. Because it's one thing for, like, there are critics, whose perspective I can respect and see even if I disagree with it. Then there are morons. And then you try to find one or two that generally lines up with your interests. And I haven't found one for Heredity just yet, so I'm still kind of holding off.
Avengers dropped from 5 to 8. Adrift, 6 to 9. Old Women Read 50 Shades, 7 to 10.
Okay.
Gotti, which apparently got a 0 from the critics across the board on Rotten Tomatoes, debuted at number 11.
John Travolta is the kiss of death at this point.
Something called Race 3 debuted at number 12. A Wrinkle in Time apparently is kicking all kinds of ass right now.
No, it's just hanging around. Not the same thing.
It jumped from number 30 to 13 over the weekend.
Where did it open?
I don't know.
Seriously, that reeks of this market that we hadn't opened, and we finally, like, did China finally approve it?
I was going to say, because it went up like 88 theaters, it looks like. Or they
Yeah,
were...
like that. Yeah, that is, China or India or some country with strict censorship laws finally approving it to be released.
Hotel Artemis, which I did see, fell from 8 to 14. Won't You Be My Neighbor actually got an uptick in theaters as well. We might actually be able to see this thing.
I'm mad about that. I'm so mad that it's not playing anywhere in Utah County. I'm so pissed.
Like I said, it just opened up in a bunch more theaters, so you might need to keep checking. Well, that rose from 19 to 15. Upgrade, 9 to 16. Yeesh. RBG, 16 to 17. Life of the Party, which normally Michelle What's-Her-Face's movies do pretty well. This one doesn't seem to be doing as well.
Michelle who?
McCarthy.
Wait, Michelle?
What did I call her? Melissa McCarthy.
Oh, no, she sucks.
You suck. All right, I can't get the budget here on Rotten Tomatoes, but on Box Office Mojo, but it's currently at 61 million worldwide. Hopefully they didn't spend a lot of money.
Look, when the Happy Time Murders leaves a giant crater where it lands, maybe she'll finally go away.
Oh no, the Happy Time Murders is going to kill it. It's going to make all the money.
I really don't think it will.
It's going to make all the monies.
No, this is your Gambit argument. I'm going to project my desires for this property onto it while ignoring all actual empirical evidence.
Your empirical evidence.
No, I can be quantified and referenced via empirical evidence, but I am not in and of myself empirical evidence. It's
Overboard sank from 12 to 19, and finally Breaking In fell from 11 to 20, which is currently sitting at what is Breaking In sitting at? Did anyone go see this thing? Not really.
Probably. I think a few people did.
You know what?
Not a whole lot.
It's actually profitable because they only spent $6 million on it.
Good. Keep a reasonable budget for your smaller films, and you might make money.
Yeah, this is currently almost at $50 million on a $6 million budget. Well, good for them. Good for Universal. Hot diggity.
I anticipate at least 3 sequels now.
I hope not.
Because that's how anytime there's a low budget success, everyone, the studio executives get all moist downstairs.
What do you call it? Breaking in again?
Something like that.
Breaking in with a vengeance.
The first break-in.
Breaking in harder.
Any number of things.
All right, here's where we stand currently worldwide.
I was once broken into. I don't know.
I was once broken into. Obviously, the number one movie in the world is still The Avengers, and it's still Black Panther. Nothing even comes close. Though Deadpool 2 is trying, as is Ready Player One.
Deadpool 2 has a significant way to go. It's barely half of Black Panther.
Well, I mean, again, it's trying. It's the number 3 movie in the world right now. I mean, your ability to denigrate in the face of overwhelming positive evidence is what a treasure. Deadpool 2 currently
Deadpool 2 will be one of the top 10 movies by the end of the year.
It's currently a top 10 movie. It's number 3 for Christ's sake.
And it's not, and nothing is going to. It is not going to fall out of the top 10. Was my point.
Okay. It's currently sitting at $690 million. Ready Player One is steadily still at number 4 with $581 million. Operation Red Sea, which is a foreign movie, is currently sitting at number 5 at $579 million. Another foreign movie, Detective Chinatown 2, is currently at $544 million. Who to Funk It, Rampage, is currently sitting at $421 million.
Don't underestimate The Rock, man.
Yeah. Jurassic World, which debuts this Friday in America, but has already opened up in other parts of the world. It's currently sitting at number 8 with $372 million.
It debuted outside of all the major markets, made $370 million, immediately into the top 10.
Yeah.
Terrible year for movies.
50 Shades Freed, Robert Winfree's favorite movie this year so far. Currently sitting
I mean, seriously, why do you keep... That worked when you poke Ronnie with it, because he overreacts.
It makes me laugh. It doesn't matter what else it does.
Right.
50 Shades Free is currently sitting at $370 million. Monster Hunt 2 has fallen from whatever it was in the middle there till number 10. Peter Rabbit's been knocked out of the top 10. It's currently sitting at 11. And
Good.
Solo is still there, still fighting, baby, at $342 million. After that...
Think about that for just a minute. If I had told you 2 years ago that the Solo movie would not make the top 10 at the end of 2018, what would your reaction have been?
It still might. You got to give it some time.
Come on. There's at least 3 major releases to come that are going to finish in the top 10, knock some of these others down. I mean, Fallen Kingdom is going up. Ant-Man and the Wasp is going to be there. The Grinch is going to finish there, probably.
And then we have Aquaman and Bumblebee.
No one cares about Aquaman. Bumblebee might. You have the Fantastic Beasts sequel is coming out in November.
It certainly is, Ollie. All right, let's move this along. So we got A Quiet Place, Pacific Rim, The Maze Runner, Tomb Raider. Oh, look at Tomb Raider. The Incredibles 2, currently on the list at $259 million at number 17. Paddington 2, Insidious: The Last Key, and Red Sparrow, or as other people are referring to it, the precursor to the Black Widow solo movie that Marvel will put out. All right.
Maybe.
So with that said, we can close this up for now. Well, as we talked about the release schedule, next week is Jurassic Park, and we've got still got a little ways to go before the summer is over with some pretty big hitters coming up. So we'll see what happens. All right, in the meantime, in the green time, in between time, I have a question for you.
Do you know?
Are you ready? No! I said, are you ready?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
In the face of overwhelming positivity, there are 10 people who say piss on Incredibles 2. It stinks. And 11 people. And those 11 people are as follows. Kristen Lopez.
Bear in mind, if you happen to know any of these people, I expect you to hurl quasi-rotten fruit at them. Not fully rotten, but just, about a week past its best date.
Kristen Lopez of Culturist. Incredibles 2 is a solid outing from Pixar, but after 14 years of waiting, it should more than live up to its title.
Yeah, I imagine we're going to hear this more than once. Guys, schedules are a thing. You can't just upend them, especially for something as labor-intensive as the animation process for a Pixar movie, because a few of them are successful. It took time, sure. Would it? I mean, maybe we'd all prefer it if it had been closer to the original, but I don't know how fair it is, how reasonable it is, to hold that against the finished product as like, oh god, it took 14 years. This should have been a masterclass. No, they didn't spend 14 years making it. Like,
I think
okay, if that had been the case, if they had legitimately spent 14 years actively working on this project, okay, that's fair. That's not the case.
but these movies where they do take excessively long periods of time to make them don't turn out very well. Again, I give you The Good Dinosaur. Had to be written and rewritten again, and by the time it was over, it was a mess.
Yeah, it wound up being something completely different from where it started. And
Again,
there's a few of those movies in Pixar's repertoire that just you can tell, okay, this started as one thing, and somewhere along the way, things got changed, things got shifted, we wound up going a different direction. I mean, Brave's the same way.
Right. Keith Watson of Slant Magazine. Everything in Incredibles 2 is inexorably driven toward a big final blowout. That sequence is suitably grand and eye-popping, but haven't we seen all this before? Sir, stop reviewing movies.
I'm so jaded about superhero movies that even the good ones, how dare they follow conventional narrative structure and build towards a climax. And then really, I can't even say anything bad about said climax, so let me just bitch about, oh god. The hero's journey is so played.
Again,
piss off.
Stop reviewing movies, sir.
Stop breathing.
Well, I don't wish death on the man. But...
No, just until he passes out.
Okay.
Like, I don't want him to permanently stop breathing, but just hold your breath until you fall unconscious. You will immediately begin breathing normally again.
Alan Zilberman of Brightest Young Things. Mm-hmm.
Really? You have to be on a watch list, sir.
This sequel continues the story as nothing has changed in the past 14 years.
Because they said it immediately after. Like,
hang on.
How stupid are you?
That is to the film's credit and also its detriment. Yeah, I don't think this guy got the memo that this picks up right where the last one left off. Literally. Literally seconds later.
Oh, God. No, nothing changed in the intervening 14 years because they set the movie. I mean, what's the other one that kind of does that?
Oof.
I mean, there have been so many that are just like sequels that start immediately after the first one wraps up.
I guess Back to the Future 3. Back to the Future 3 is like, I think, starts immediately after.
Both 2 and 3 pick up immediately where the other, and 2 and 3 were actually shot concurrently. So 2 is a better example in the sense that it took them a couple of more years, but yeah, they just picked up right where they left off because it was written that way.
Adrian Ruiz of Excelsior. After 14 years of waiting, are you sensing a pattern here? After 14 years of waiting, they could have cooked up something more powerful.
Oh, God, that's so stupid. Again, I mean, I really do wish that, The Force Awakens had been a better movie because we had to wait all that time and suffer through all those prequels that were just so terrible. And really, couldn't they have done something better than just retread A New Hope? I mean, shut up.
Matthew Lacona of the San Diego Reader, top critic. Incredibles 2 feels like a rebuke of the audience that came to gawk at superhero movies. And worse, that had the nerve to identify with its superior protagonists. 1 out of 5 stars.
How do you figure? Like, what personal issues are you now projecting onto this that are overly coloring your actual analysis of the product? We have a discussion about the necessity of superheroes and how much self-reliance we should have on them versus how much self-reliance we should have? Because that's a real thing and has been for, 80 years.
You're going to love this next one.
Oh, am I?
Yeah, this one feels like Ronnie should be on right now to just start yelling, "Who hurt you?" Barry Hertz.
Apparently his parents.
Of the Globe and Mail, top critic. Big, annoying, and mostly pointless.
Oh, for the love of... I mean, what constitutes annoying? I would really like that point to be expounded upon, because, again, what annoys you is personal. There are generally accepted points that are annoying to a large swath of humanity, such that we can kind of generalize. But I struggle to find anything in this film that would be qualified as annoying to the majority of the pop. I mean, do you just hate kids? Because I do. I mean, I get that. But even that, it doesn't. I mean, yeah, Dash is a little obnoxious, but he doesn't actually take up that much screen time. I'm not sure what about this had you kind of clawing your eyes out going, get me out of this theater.
Molly Freeman of Screen Rant. Incredibles 2 captures most of the fun of Pixar's The Incredibles, but feels somewhat outdated in the modern Hollywood landscape of superhero movies. Not enough black folks? What's the problem here?
No, you don't understand. The man was not a bumbling buffoon, and the woman wasn't able to effortlessly do everything. This is clearly a film that serves the patriarchy. Like, shut up.
Mike LaSalle of the San Francisco Chronicle, top critic. Whatever the intention, The Incredibles 2 plays out as the worst of both worlds. A combination of the typical weaknesses of both animated and live-action superhero films with few of the strengths.
I'm not entirely sure how you can have seen a bunch of the terrible, terrible live-action superhero movies and arrive at this conclusion. I mean, did you not review Justice League? Did you not suffer through the four-stick movie? Have you never seen Catwoman?
Catwoman is fantastic. I will not have
Shut up. It is terrible.
I will not have you besmirching Catwoman.
Mark, that movie is terrible.
You're terrible. Catwoman.
No.
Catwoman is genius.
Awful.
Catwoman is a genius movie.
Mark, the CGI has to even make your eyes bleed. Don't defend it here. You defend it as part of a gimmick on a gimmicky show, fine. Don't defend it to me here.
I'm standing by my defense of that movie.
Fine. Anyone who wants to hear Mark be more wrong can look up the On Trial where he and Sean tackle Catwoman. It's a terrible, terrible movie.
Ty Burr.
The point here being, if you're actually trying to compare this with that Drek, you are... I'm not entirely sure what substances you were on when you saw Incredibles 2.
Ty Burr of Boston Globe, top critic. In the end, the feeling you may take with you as you leave the theater, despite the forced good cheer of the finale and Michael Giacchino's airily mellifluous score, is one of disenchantment. This person's very unhappy.
Dude, really? I mean, this is the guy who needs to, you need to sit him down in a room and go, it's not your fault, man.
Daniel...
I mean, again, if you are just tired of watching superhero movies, fine. It doesn't make this a bad movie. It means you're tired of superhero movies, which is fair. You can say that without denigrating the film.
Daniel M. Kimmel of New England Movies Weekly. Part of the problem is that in the years since the original, we've been inundated with superhero movies. It's a film that feels like we've already seen it several times. But no, we haven't.
No, we really haven't. Like, again, in all seriousness, out of all the superhero movies that have been released over the in the 14 intervening years, it's a chunk of time. There've been a lot of superhero movies. I mean, how many of them actually dealt with, even the first one, how many of them actually dealt with a disenchanted, superhero who was been forced into a life of drudgery and dronery and told that he doesn't matter? How many of them actually tackled that? How many of them tackled, the family dynamics? And please, these are still the best Fantastic Four movies by a country mile.
I mean, here's a comparison. Let's look at the X-Men franchise. Okay, so these are people born with powers in a world that hates them. This actually handled that better than most of the X-Men films.
Yes, it did.
So, like, the idea, well, we've seen it all before. Let's just focus on the X-Men, which are your most direct comparison, because you can't really compare these to the Fantastic Four movies. I mean, you can, in that the dynamic is there from the comic books, but they're nothing. The movies don't deal with how powers affect you worldwide. So again, let's just look at the last three of the First Class franchise. First Class, Days of Future Past, and Apocalypse. Apocalypse wasn't about anything.
No, or good.
Apocalypse was just there. Days of Future Past dealt somewhat with the racism against the mutants, but for the most part it was...
Days of Future Past was significantly more about individuals losing and regaining hope in the face of your inevitable demise.
Right. You know, and first...
Which is great. I love that movie, but not actually tackling the issues of, boy, we hate those mutants.
Let's look at Logan. Logan was very much
Logan's
a character
great.
piece. Yeah, Logan's great, but I wouldn't necessarily again say this is the world dealing with with people who hate you. Logan was a character.
No, Logan
piece.
Logan's a western about the gunslinger's last ride.
Right.
And his quest for redemption in the face of all the horrible things he's done over his existence.
And then the one before that, the Wolverine. Again, the Wolverine was a great action movie, but it wasn't really about anything. Oh, the train sequence is fun.
And before that, we had the abomination that was X-Men Origins.
Right. So again, he's saying like we're inundated with superhero movies. Many of them don't. No, I don't think any of them deal with the family dynamic in terms of
almost none of them really.
An actual mother and father, with superhero powers and the desire to use them for good. And then the ones that deal with a world that hates superpowered people, none of the X-Men movies really dealt with it.
No, literally the closest we've got is, well, we're sure sick of you guys saving the world from Tony Stark screwing up. But we still love you because you're Tony Stark.
Yeah. And lastly, Owen Gleiberman of Variety, top critic. What was organic and even obsessive in the first outing comes off as pat and elaborate formula here.
Yeah. It's almost like, and let me be clear about this. The point about, it's been 14 years is a relevant one in the sense that, yeah, things about the culture have changed and how we view these things might be a little bit changed. But there's only so much that you should hold that against the movie. In this instance, I'm not sure how much of that is... just because you've seen it more doesn't mean it's badly executed. Really, do you want something... are you happier reviewing, art house film with horribly disjointed dialogue across 7 different languages, splashed with weird imagery, so you can come out of that and go... Oh, God, this was so moving and unique and refreshing in a world of overly polished, blockbuster crap. Like, come on. These are not comparable things. Nor should they be.
All right, that's all the rotten ones. I was just kind of looking through real quick to see what the fresh ones were like. And even some of the fresh ones, I'm like, really? That's how you feel? All right. Ugh. I just want to read this one real quick, and then we'll call it a night. T.T. Stern Enzi of the Dayton City Paper. Despite essentially being a carbon copy, the sequel cranks out more than a few surprises involving the parents.
It's not a carbon copy.
It's nowhere near a carbon copy.
We deliberately discussed the ways this is different from the first one in our review. But hey, I guess if you hadn't actually seen the first one in, 14 years and you were just, oh, it's the same characters, then yeah, sure, it's the same. Like, no, you suck.
And once again, you're terrible at your job. Please quit and do something else.
Somebody let the air out of that guy's tires. Don't puncture them. Don't damage them. Just undo the cap. Let the air out. And...
All right, going forward, so here's all the places you'll find Robert Winfree and I kicking the ball around. Next Tuesday, we will be reviewing Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. That is June 26th. July 3rd, Robert and I will be reviewing Luke Cage Season 2, #Black Folks.
Oh, okay. Can I just say, I am worried about Luke Cage Season 2.
It seems to be getting good reviews so far.
Sure. So did Jessica Jones season 2.
Oh, it was fine. We will.
It really wasn't. We had that discussion, and I mean, the reason I'm worried about it is literally that the second season of almost all of these Netflix shows have been incredibly, at best, uneven. At worst, they border on the unwatchable.
On the 10th,
and I didn't care much for Luke Cage season 1, so I'm worried.
Still my favorite.
That's fine. I have nothing to say to your personal enjoyment. If you enjoy it, Godspeed and party on.
July 10th, we'll be reviewing Ant-Man and the Wasp. July 17th, we're going to be doing Die Hard on One Leg.
It's Skyscraper, and for the record, during the time we were talking about that, I looked at the director, and my enthusiasm has cooled significantly.
On the 24th, we'll be doing a TV party tonight for Voltron seasons 5 and 6, because they're half seasons, you see. So we'll do them both and make it a full show. Maybe Robert Cooper will be on, maybe he won't, but I'll definitely have Robert Winfree. So Robert Winfree...
I wouldn't say definitely.
We'll absolutely have Robert Winfree on for Voltron seasons 5 and 6 for a TV party tonight. Someone has to do this show with me. It's going to be you.
You just threatened earlier to do this by yourself. I'm curious as to what that might look like.
Nobody wants to see that. Anyway, on the 31st of July, Mission Impossible 6.
Boo.
Fallout. On August 7th, Robert Winfree cries into his hands, otherwise known as Christopher Robin.
Like a small child whose cookie you have taken away.
And then, finally, our last movie of the summer blockbuster season, we will review The Meg, because I like shock movies.
It's going to be so bad. I can't wait.
It's going to be terrible. And then we'll do our summer wrap-up on the 21st.
I'm actually... remind me when we talk about The Meg that I have to talk about some of the source material and the insanity that surrounded that, because I read that when it came out and I really enjoyed it. I still do from time to time when I reread it. But
other places you'll see Robert Winfree and I, we're going to take a couple of weeks off. We've got some on trials and some TV parties, and other people will be coming in to join me and talking about things. But Robert Winfree and I will be back to talk The Predator on September 18th. And then I've rescheduled Lost in Space. Are you still interested in that?
No.
All right, so that'll probably end up just being me and David Wright, or me, David Wright, and Jesse Starcher for the 25th. But, it's October will be here sooner than later, and of course, we have to talk about Hannibal Season 2 on October 2nd.
Yep, that'll be fun. Love that show.
Then there's a Damn You Hollywood, where we'll be inviting Jason Teasley on to talk about Venom. It'll be me, you, and him. We'll be reviewing the new Halloween movie on the 23rd of October.
I'm kind of down for that. The preview has me cautiously optimistic.
Good. And then we hit
Venom,
the ground...
not so much. Venom's going to suck.
Yeah, it is. And then we hit the ground running in November. November 6th, The Nutcracker and the Four Realms.
Wait. Seriously? You put that on? Hang on. I don't recall agreeing to that.
No, yes, it's on the schedule. Well, it's either that or Bohemian Rhapsody, one of the two.
How about the Suspiria remake?
How about no?
Come on.
Oh, once again, Nutcracker, I'm willing to trade the Nutcracker out, even though it's a Disney movie. It's going to be terrible. But I'm willing to trade out...
Yes, it is.
But those are the rules. It's a Disney movie. And I'm willing to trade it out for Bohemian Rhapsody, because I know I'm going to see that too.
Oh, but Bryan Singer's directing Bohemian Rhapsody.
Great, we're doing the Nutcracker. Moving on.
I make no promises about my participation in that review. Just throwing that out there.
Then we have The Grinch on the 13th, The New Fantastic Beasts on the 20th, Wreck-It Ralph on the 27th.
Boo.
My kids are so
Boo,
excited.
I say. Boo.
My kids are so excited for Wreck-It Ralph.
I haven't seen the first one, actually.
And then we run through December with Creed 2 on the 4th of December.
No, absolutely not.
Absolutely,
no.
Yes.
I will not.
I'll have Pat on then.
All right. That'll go so badly for you, but go for it. Dude, he hated Creed. He's going to hate this even more.
I have an entire week dedicated to boxing and Rocky stuff. We have to do this.
You have to. If you feel you have to do that, fine. I'm not watching it.
You're becoming quite the diva. Then we have Robin Hood on the 11th. And then that's it.
That end of November, we're just spacing out through significant portions of December, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. And then finally...
Robin Hood looks like crap, by the way.
December 26th is Aquaman, and then we review Bumblebee on New Year's Day.
Boo.
Roll right into January. We got Mary Poppins Returns on January 8th.
I'm not sure I'm seeing that.
The Hellboy remake on January 15th.
You know, I've never seen the original Mary Poppins all the way through.
You should. It's great. And then
And it's Dick Van Dyke. I refuse.
And then Glass on January 22nd. That's all that's fit to print right now. That's all the movies. Every single one of them Robert Winfree is going to be a part of.
Yeah, no.
In the meantime, here's what else is going on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. We just posted the Fantastic Four, the Trial of Galactus, or the Trail of Galactus, whatever you like, on source material. Tomorrow is our review of Amorphous, Queen of Time. Next week, we've got Justice League America, Salvation Run, and myself and Jesse Starcher will review the new Nine Inch Nails, Are You a Good Witch, or a Bad Witch, or a Sandwich? And we're gonna we'll take a look at some extra Nine Inch Nails songs as well. If you're new to the Radulich and Broadcasting Network and you want to see what else we've been doing, we did a whole thing on Star Wars. We reviewed a Han Solo comic. We reviewed the Solo movie. We reviewed the new Galactic Empire. We reviewed a Cloak and Dagger comic because of the new TV show. We did an on-trial.
This is terrible.
We did an on-trial for the 1995 Oscar race between Forrest Gump and Shawshank Redemption. We reviewed the
somehow didn't mention Pulp Fiction
because I'm saving it for next year's Quentin Tarantino release.
In all seriousness, though, the 95 Oscars was one of the best classes of films over the last 30 years. It was all of them were great.
We reviewed the new Lordy. We had Alexis Hana on to review Kingdom Come. Jesse and I reviewed the new Krypton. That went better than I thought it was going to go. And then probably my favorite album of this year so far, Ghost prequel. We reviewed that as well. So that's everything happening that I'm aware of on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network.
Jeez. Why is there a Secret Life of Pets 2? This just seems like a bad idea.
Well, that's okay. I took it off the schedule for next year. Instead, we're going to do the new Charlie's Angels.
No.
Yes.
No.
I built
absolutely not.
I'm building a whole week around this.
I am no, dude. Elizabeth Banks is directing. No.
Yes, I know. I'm so excited.
No.
We'll talk.
Just no.
We'll talk. I will submit, as I do every year, when I finalize the 2019 list. I will submit it to you, and that'll be your opportunity to offer other suggestions if you don't want to do what's listed.
Oh God, the Top Gun sequel's next year.
You betcha. I've already got stuff planned for that.
It's not that good a movie.
Are you going to do your plugs or not?
I'm just looking at next year and going, "Oh God, can I have the rest of this year back?"
Do you want to know all the ones I picked so far?
No, too much of this is going to wind up getting shuffled around in the next 3 months. So
Mary Poppins Returns, Hellboy, Glass,
Boo.
The Lego Movie 2, Dark
Boo.
Phoenix, Chaos Walking, Captain Marvel, Dumbo, Shazam, The Voyage of Dr. Dolittle.
I'm hoping so many of these just get pushed back indefinitely.
Avengers 4, Detective Pikachu,
Okay.
John Wick Chapter...
No.
Yes.
No, I will not see Detective Pikachu. I will not.
You're ridiculous. John Wick Chapter 3, Aladdin,
Okay.
Godzilla King of Monsters, Charlie's Angels, Son of Shaft,
Ugh.
Toy Story 4,
All right.
Cowboy Ninja Viking,
Why?
comic book, Spider-Man.
Really?
Yes. Spider-Man
All right.
Homecoming 2, Top Gun Maverick, The Lion King, New Mutants, Artemis Fowl, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Whoa. You're choosing the New Mutants over Hobbs and Shaw?
Yeah.
I am surprised.
Comic books.
Dude, Fast and the Furious spinoff.
Whatever.
Just saying.
New Mutants, Artemis Fowl, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which I
No Artemis Fowl.
I will take Artemis Fowl off and I'll put Hobbs and Shaw in its place. How does that sound?
And look, Artemis Fowl has Josh Gad. No.
All right, I'm not going to argue with you about it, even though it's Disney and those are the rules. But how do you spell Hobbs?
Hobbs.
Hobbs and Shaw.
Dude, it's The Rock and Jason Statham. Come on.
SHAW?
Yes.
Fine. I put Hobbs and Shaw in its place. You happy now?
No, but better.
It's the one concession I'm giving you. Let me just take this off the schedule. All right. Lost my place. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, It Chapter 2, The Kitchen,
Which you
Abominable.
won't get out of again. Wait, why The Kitchen?
Comic book.
Really?
Untitled live action Disney.
Oh God, these are so bad.
I threw the animated feature Gotham by Gaslight on here as a damn you Hollywood. I'll talk to you about it offline. Wonder Woman 2, the next James Bond movie, Sonic the Hedgehog, Terminator, Frozen 2, Star Wars, Masters of the Universe, and Wicked.
Ugh. Yeah, there's some serious stretches in there that I'm just like, God, no.
That's okay. I've already started building the 2020 calendar, too. The first one on here, Bad Boys for Life.
That will never get made.
Well, it's currently slated for January
Sure.
17th of 2020.
So's Gambit for 2027. It's never happening.
Go fuck yourself. All right. Can you please do your own plugs now that I've revealed most of the 2019 calendar?
Now that I want to go die, sure.
And the winter of Robert Winfree's discontent continues.
Yeah, you just pick, like, some of these things are just so bad.
Look at the calendar and see what I got to choose from. I didn't tell them to make these movies.
I did. Like, again, that's part of my thing. Like, there's maybe 3 in there that I can go, no, let's do this instead. Maybe 3. It's just a bad year.
Well, maybe we'll talk about that later. Third time. Do
right.
your fucking plugs before I end the show.
I'm around.
Terrific.
This Saturday, you can find me early in the morning covering UFC Fight Night 132. It's a crappy card from Singapore. It's exclusive to Fight Pass. And in the main event, Donald Cerrone is going to lose to another up-and-comer in a foreign country. You can find me most Sundays hosting the 411 Ground and Pound radio show where we review and preview MMA events. The most recent one is up. It's about 50 minutes of me talking to myself about Fight Night 132 because it's a terrible card and I didn't blame anyone else for just kind of going, I'm going to pass on this. This coming Sunday, I think we're just reviewing Fight Night 132 because of the timing on this, and then the week after that, we will be, so like July 1st, we have a double preview for The Ultimate Fighter's 27th and hopefully final season, because ESPN didn't want it. And we will also preview UFC 226, which is the big summer event for the UFC that I'm sure a handful of people will buy. It's tough, man. I mean, you got 2 great fights. You have Miocic versus Cormier and then Holloway and Ortega. They're genuinely great fights. But I don't know how well that's going to draw. Anyway, so we'll preview that.
I'll probably get it.
And, well, there's at least one buy you can count on, Endeavor.
I wouldn't count on it.
It's about you being terrible.
I said probably.
Seriously, they have the best crop of fighters in, MMA history, and they can't somehow manage to actually sell any of the really good fights. Instead, they're just like prepared to throw money at Conor McGregor. It's so stupid.
Yeah, it looks like he's fighting Nurmagomedov in October, allegedly.
They keep... Yeah, sure. And he was supposed to fight Rafael dos Anjos for an interim welterweight title fight 3 months ago. Shut up, Conor. I'll believe it when you actually sign the damn bout agreement. Until then, shut up and go away.
I was going to say, I'll believe it when they actually show up in the cage.
Look, I will begin discussing it and entertaining the possibility when the bout is signed. I won't actually expect it to go through, because that's the world we live in. But... And like Connor's dead to me until he actually signs an agreement. I just don't care. But yeah, that's mostly where you can find me. Again, we'll be back next week where I will try to find something positive to say about Fallen Kingdom. I don't know that I'll be able to. In all seriousness, before we sign off, Mark, are you looking forward? How is your anticipation level for that movie at this moment?
It's never been high, but then again, like, I wasn't the world's biggest fan of. I wasn't the world's biggest fan of Jurassic World either. You know,
no, you just argued with me for 30 minutes about their use of crappy CGI.
Oh, again, it was more of like, oh, if you got, if it's popular and people like it, and people want to see more of this, I'm like, that's fine, whatever. Like, I'm not going to argue about that. Me personally, I was like, meh. I could give or take this entire franchise at this point.
The biggest saving grace potentially for that entire film is actually the director, because Bayona is legitimately one of the guys I'm interested in watching just for his name alone. But I couldn't convince Mark to actually review a Monster Calls a few years back, probably because the experience of watching it might have actually killed him.
I don't remember what my issue was with it.
You just weren't interested, and when I had to explain that it's actually a thoughtful meditation on the grieving process and loss, you just kind of went, no, I don't want to cry myself to death in a theater, because you're a profoundly empathetic human being.
Okay, I don't remember.
I mean, look, I saw it and was a mess. It's it's a great movie, but you have to know what you're getting into, and it's designed to pull at your guts at times, and does so very, very well. But the director I'm interested in, so I hold out a modicum of hope. But yeah, just every preview for that movie has just killed my limited interest to begin with more and more.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. If we didn't do a review show, I don't know if I would go see. If I would have gone in the movies to go see it, I don't.
Hey, that's how I feel so many weeks.
Welcome to Robert Winfree Hates the Show.
I don't hate the show. I hate the movies you pick. That's the difference.
That's the show, buddy. All right, are we done here?
Yeah, I think so. So we'll be back next week. Should be a lot of fun. We'll talk about that, and I don't have hope, but I would like the movie to surprise me. Let me put it like that.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. All right. For Robert,
you're gonna get sick and beg off. That's what's gonna happen.
For Robert Winfree, I'm your mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. Be well, be safe, and behave.
Progressive #1, #2 employee. Leave a message at the... Hey, Jamie. It's me, Jamie. This is your daily pep talk. I know it's been rough going ever since people found out about your a cappella group, Mad Harmony, but you will bounce back. I mean, you're the guy always helping people find coverage options with the Name Your Price tool. It should be you giving me the pep talk. Now get out there, hit that high note, and take Mad Harmony all the way to nationals this year. Sorry, it's pitchy.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.